Good afternoon to you all and happy Friday. How are you doing today? Where in the world are you watching from? Do let me know. Yes, happy Friday. How has this week been? Can you believe that we're already well into October? What is it, the 9th today? The 9th of October. So how are you doing on this slightly brighter day today, actually? I'm delighted to tell you, at least here in London, it's been really wet and grey and really cold, but today it's quite nice and bright. So welcome to you from wherever you are joining, wherever in the country or wherever in the world you are joining. Do let me know where you are, and given that I am British, I always like to start off with talking about the weather. So and I think I mentioned last week, I'm going to mention again, I don't really want to depress you, but it's only, I think, 3 weeks till the clocks go back. Oh my goodness. And then it's really dark and usually very cold until the springtime. Anyway, enough of all of that. Good afternoon to you. Happy Friday. How are we doing this week? Hi Junior, thanks for joining. Junior's been doing his tracker and he's had a very productive week, so I'm glad that you could join us. Good afternoon to you all. What have you been working on this week? How is your family? How's your business? How's your team? How are you doing? How are you finding life in this October month? What have you been working on this week? Do let me know. I know that Junior has been busy launching his new Thai boxing class for kids, which is very exciting. Hi Paula, nice to see you as well. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope you've had a really productive week wherever you are watching from in the world. I do hope that you are safe and well. So this week's been actually a great week from my perspective. So we held the first workshop of the 6 people management workshops that I've been telling you about. They're for new managers or those people that need a little bit of a refresh. And this week we covered the foundations of people management, which was really great, and we dug into kind of delegation and getting clear expectations, and yeah, it was a really good session. So enjoy that. Hope that you've had a very productive week and that you're going into the weekend feeling satisfied and happy with your with everything that you've achieved this week. So last Friday we were talking about testing, of course, very important, not just in early stage businesses, but as you go through and you're launching new products and services, really important to test. And I shared with you my 7 steps of testing. And just to very quickly recap, first of all, the first person you have to convince, the first person you have to sell to is you. So that's step 1 for sure, is you need to convince yourself. Then you need to get some feedback from people around you that you know are going to give you some honest feedback, that you trust their opinions and you trust that they are, as I say, going to tell you honestly what they think. Then we need to create what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. So this is the minimum time and effort and money that you can create your product or service to put it out there, to trial it. Really important, rather than spending a huge amount of time and effort creating something that you put out there that then your market doesn't want. And so now then step 4, this is the hard one. This is where you put it out there in front of your most critical, if you like, ideal customers. So try and find those people that you know might be a little bit difficult, might be a bit glass half empty, if you like, and get it out to them and get their feedback and get it out to as many people as possible, so you can really get some really good feedback from those critical people. And then, of course, we need to tweak it, and only then do we need a very simple website. I like a kind of a 1-page website, and then we start getting out there on social, and we try and push people to that website where we capture their information, and there we need a social media plan, which is step 7. We need a plan for both organic and paid traffic, because we need to be really organised. So they are my 7 steps of testing. If you haven't already seen last week's live, I definitely would advise you to watch that. It's in the group along with all of the other lives. And testing is one of the topics that we are going to be covering in Z Ventures, which is our Idea to Investor Ready bootcamp that starts in January. And this week we actually published the date of our launch event, which is the 28th of November. And you are all invited if you're interested in finding out more about that bootcamp, how to raise investment, how to go from having an idea to obviously testing it and getting yourself ready to pitch to investors. And we'll actually give you the opportunity to pitch to some early stage investors that we have in our network. I'm saying we, that's because this is in collaboration with my husband. So my husband and I are doing this together. He has a lot of experience in raising money. He's a serial entrepreneur, a lot of experience in raising money and all the more technical side of things, the financial, the cap table, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm really talking about the idea validation and also how you spend the money once you get it. So yeah, this is a collaboration that we are launching in January, and I hope that you can come along to the 28th of November launch. If you haven't already registered for your place, you'll find the event in the group, and you have all been invited, so looking forward to seeing you there. Right, so let's get to it. Today we are going to talk about remote working. Now, I know that when this crisis hit, a lot of us probably thought that it might just be for a few weeks or maybe a few months, but I think what I'm noticing in the last few weeks with the people that I'm talking to is I think that now we're realising that this is actually a reality that many of us are going to be facing for the foreseeable future. And so I thought I'd do this live just to kind of reorientate ourselves. I know I did a lot about this at the beginning of lockdown, but this is different now because this is more how do we make this business as usual and how do we make this work both for ourselves and also the people that we're working with. Because my belief, my strong belief, is that even once this crisis has passed, even when we get back to normal, whatever that means, what is that new normal that people keep talking about, I don't think life is ever going to be quite the same again. Things like flexible working, remote and disparate teams, people wanting more flexibility in their lives, and the need for managers to be able to kind of keep their teams together when they might not all necessarily be in the office every day. I think these things are here to stay, I really do. I just don't think we're going to go back to how things were before. People are asking themselves questions. People are asking themselves really fundamental questions about what do they want their lives to look like, what do they want their businesses to look like, where do they want to live, what quality of life do they want, what kind of balance do they want in their life. And I think that means different conversations with all of you as managers and leaders in your businesses, but also it means conversations for all of us because we're all seeing the world a little bit differently, and I don't think that's going to change. So many people actually think that it's harder to manage when you're working at a distance, when you're managing a distributed team, when your team are remote working, when you're working from home. A lot of people think it's harder. You know, how do you know what people are working on? How do you know if they are working? Can you really trust them? And how do you know if they're okay? How do you really know if they're okay when you're not getting that kind of vibe from them? So in those ways, it is harder. But here's the thing, just like I learned in my career that managing people who are doing a job that you have no clue about and that you've never done yourself is a really good way to stop being a control freak. Ask me how I found that one out. In the same way, managing people who are not physically there with you in the same space as you all the time actually forces you as a manager to really focus on the fundamentals and get those right. So I actually think, particularly if you're new to management or you need a bit of a refresh, I think this is a really good opportunity to get those basics right for yourself and also for other people. So I think these things apply whether or not you are managing a team or whether you're on your own in your business, but you still have contractors or people that provide services for you. I think it's really useful to think about this in all of those different contexts. So today I want to focus on how to make remote working productive and engaging for you, but also for the people that you are working with. And also you can think about this in the context of your customers as well, and the people that are in your network, because we're all going through a version of this, one version or another of remote working, or certainly the patterns of our work are certainly changing. And I've got 5 key things that I want you to think about and I want to share with you, and they spell out the word remote. So the first thing that I want to share with you is recognise, so that R in remote is definitely recognise. And by that I mean the first thing you need to do, as so many things that I share with you, is that it really needs to start with you as the business owner, and recognising that remote working or working from home might be more or less challenging for you depending on how you're wired. Some people's management style is very much more hands-on. Some people's communication style, they much prefer it to do it face-to-face. And so recognising how you're wired and what that means for you working remotely is really important, and understanding the impact that that has on you, on your mental health, on your physical health, on how you see yourself and your business and your team and the people that you work with. It's really important that you start with that, like, how am I doing about this? How am I feeling about this? And the truth is that some people are finding this way more challenging than others. Yeah, that's just the simple truth. And I know that through all these months of talking to different people, talking to different business owners, talking to members of their team, there is no doubt that some people are finding this way more challenging than others. And it links very directly in most cases to how you're wired. So recognizing that everybody is different. So some people are loving it, yeah? Some people are loving having the freedom, having the space, having they don't have to commute, managing their own time. Some people are really loving it, not having to deal with colleagues that maybe they find challenging, etc. So other people are finding it a real struggle. It's fine if you've got an office at home like I do here, but some people don't have that space, and so they're in the bedroom or they're in the living room. There's been a lot of challenges over the summer for those of you that have got children. You know, there's been all the homeschooling, and even now it's very different working from home than it is leaving in the morning to go to an office. And so that's one thing, is the sort of practical logistics of it, if you like. But there's also another side to this, and that is a lot of loneliness and isolation that a lot of people are feeling. People are feeling disconnected from their colleagues, from the people that they work with. They might also be feeling left out of crucial decisions or conversations. And so it's really important that you're aware of all of those things, both for yourself, but also for any of the people that you're interacting with, whether it be your customers, your partners, your suppliers, or of course members of your team. So the first thing is really to recognise where you are at and where everybody else is. Now, the E in remote is for expectations, and this is super important, obviously not just when we're remote working, but I think particularly in the situation that we find ourselves in now. It's important to be really clear about what you want, and it's also really important to be really clear about your boundaries. When we're working at home, that kind of work-life separation, that is so important to so many people. All of this gets blurred, all these lines get blurred, and so it's really important, again, to be sort of cognizant of what those boundaries are for you, but also for your people. So what do you need to negotiate in terms of working space at home? As I say, are you in your kitchen? Are you in your living room? Are you in your bedroom? What does that mean for the people that you live with? So are there negotiations that need to happen then in terms of your physical space? Because it's so important to get your physical environment set up so that you can be productive. So making it productive means having a space that is going to make you feel productive. So how is that for the people that you work with? What hours are you working? Maybe you have childcare duties. Maybe you have to pick the kids up from school. You know, maybe you're having to negotiate with your other half about who does what. So maybe that kind of 9 to 5, which I know that a lot of business owners don't strictly stick to that as well. Ask me how I know. But it's about being clear, setting expectations with the people that you're dealing with, but also with the people that you're living with about what hours that you're going to work. Yeah, I'm sure we've all had that situation where our other half is on the sofa at 11 o'clock at night and you know, working, not going to mention any names. So think about that for yourself, but also for the people that you're working with, particularly those people that might be employees or contractors to your business. So they might not be able to work the same hours that they used to work. They might have challenges around childcare and boundaries and all those things that I just mentioned. What pressures do they have on them? What hours can they work? What are the expectations that they need to set with you? So having that conversation about expectations is really, really important. And if you haven't already done that because you kind of thought it was sort of temporary, have those conversations with the people that you're working with, that you're dealing with. Really, really important. And then my M in remote is for manage. Now, what I mean by that is managing by outcomes rather than the time spent. So one of the things that I see in my work with a lot of business owners, particularly those who don't really approve of remote working, who have had a bit of a challenge in these last few months, is that if you're a bit of a control freak and you like to kind of see what's going on and know what's going on and, you know, kind of have your finger in all those pies, it can be really challenging to move from that to an outcome focused type of management. But this is what you have to do. You have to get really clear about the outcome that you are asking your person or the person that's working with you to achieve, rather than how they do it. So if you are prone to a bit of micromanagement, if you are prone to being a little bit of a control freak, nothing wrong with that, you're probably getting involved with how people reach the goal that you've set for them. And often it doesn't really matter as much as we think it does. And this is one of the reasons why delegation is so hard. And we were talking about this in the workshop this week, the foundations of people management that I was telling you about. We kind of want to interfere with how people get to the outcome. And that is not a good style of management. It really isn't. Whether you're remote working or not, but particularly now a lot of us are remote working, it's really important to be super clear about the outcome and then not get too involved in how somebody gets there. Now, clearly, if they want your help or they want to ask your advice, that's fine. But my point here is that you need to remember that people are wired, we're all wired very differently. And I know I say this a lot, but it is really important to remember that in this context. And that means that you will see the world differently, and various tasks, you'll just approach them in completely different ways. And that might be a way that feels completely weird or completely counterintuitive to you and the way that you would do things. But before you interfere and before you get too kind of hung up on the way that somebody is doing something, just ask yourself, does it really matter? Now, clearly, if there's a much quicker way of doing something or a much more productive or efficient way, you might want to share that with the person. But be careful, because people really don't like to be micromanaged. And so I would encourage you as much as possible to manage by outcomes. Agree the goal, yes, agree the timescales, but don't get too hung up in how we are going to reach that goal. If you've ever watched anybody else tying their shoelaces or watched anybody else on a PC, trying to navigate their way around a computer screen or on their phone with their apps, it's going to drive you crazy. Yeah, it's like we all do things differently, and that's fine as long as we get to the outcome. Why do we need to get involved in how people are doing things? So that is my M. Now my O is for organise, and this is really important. So one of the things that I find about remote working is that you do need to be more organised, yeah? You definitely need to have a system, and you definitely need to have your time and your space organised. It's really easy, probably even more easy at home if you're working from home, to procrastinate. There's a lot more distractions, and discipline can be more tricky. And again, it's recognising that in yourself, but also in the people that you're working with. So we definitely need to be scheduling meetings in our calendar, scheduling meetings and tasks in our calendar. If you haven't already watched my video on my focus formula, I definitely suggest that you do that now, because that's got loads of information about how to organise yourself. But you do need to look at your week, and you need to look at your week at the beginning of the week and ask yourself, what do I want to have achieved by the end of it? And then put it in your calendar, and make sure that you know what it is that you want to do. And if you need to move it, that's fine, but there's something psychological when we've put it in our calendar, it's much more likely to get done. Now, a tip that I want to share with you that I was reminded about this week when I was working with one of my clients is that it's a really good idea to separate out the decision about what you're going to do from the actual doing. So I speak in my focus formula about when you add things to your to-do list, say what exactly it is that you want to do. Don't just put Sarah, contact Sarah, email Sarah about this, call Sarah about this, yeah? So really put as much detail as you can when you add the action to your to-do list, but even more when you add it into your calendar. Just take a moment to think about, how could I break this task down in 3 or 4 chunks? I don't know why, what will I do? It's something about the way that our brains work. Deciding, say for example, I want to do a social media post, and that is really stressing me out because I don't quite know what I'm going to do or how I'm going to do it. And so every time I look at that to do a social media post, I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. However, if I put it in my calendar and I say, right, I'm going to do it Thursday afternoon, I'm going to spend an hour on it. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to decide what the topic is, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to decide on the video, or the what do they call it, the creative, and then I'm going to decide on the words, and then I'm going to make a list of who I need to tag, etc., etc. Do that on the Monday. When you get to the Thursday, you don't have to make that decision anymore. You don't have to think about any of that. So now you're like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. And the psychology of that is truly profound. If you don't believe me, try it. Try separating the decision about the steps you're going to take from the actual doing. It is amazing how much less you procrastinate and how much more productive you are. If you are still procrastinating when you look at that broken down list, then we need to ask ourselves, why don't I want to do this task? But that's a whole nother live, plenty on procrastination in the group. Okay, so under the topic of being organised, if you are working with team members or suppliers or partners, and you need to be having regular one-to-ones with them, and you know that I've spoken about this many times before, you need to be checking in with them regularly, and even more regularly when you are working remote. It's really important to build up that trust and rapport and keep that going, and that means you need more frequent conversations than you would if you were in an office together. And this is one of the reasons why we need to be organised when we're working remotely. If you think about it, all of those non-verbal cues disappear when we're not working in the same space together. So normally, if you're working together in an office, you kind of get a sense, you kind of get a vibe maybe from your co-workers about how they're doing. You don't get any of that when you're not with them, obviously, which means you need to talk to them much more often. You need to work much more on your communication when you're not face to face as well, because we pick up a lot of that non-verbal stuff, and so video really helps with that, by the way, and the studies have shown that it's not quite as good as being face to face, but it is certainly much better than being on the phone. So you will need longer one-to-ones than you're used to having with your people, and it's really important, I mean, I would say this anyway, but it's really important that you don't cancel them. If you're in the office and you're up against it, you can kind of say to someone, I'm really sorry, could I push us back by half an hour, or is it okay if we do it tomorrow? If you do that when you're not with the person, you have no idea how that's going to land. You have no idea what headspace they're in. You have no idea whether they actually really need to talk to you today. So absolutely not cancelling those one-to-ones. Really, please don't do that. You have no idea the impact it's going to have on your people. You need to make time, more time than you normally would, for small talk and chit-chat to find out how they are and build that rapport, as I say. So there's some things in terms of getting organised, and I think that's super important anyway, but particularly when we're working remotely, we need to be really organised about our schedule and about our time. As I have said to you many times before, we all have the same 24 hours in the day, and so it's just, it's your choice what you spend it on. Okay, so my T, so the T in remote is tools, and people always jump on the tech. You know, when you talk about remote working, it's always about the tech, or what about the technology? But my point, as you know, I will always say technology is only as good as the people that are using it and the process that it is supporting. Yeah. So technology in itself, I put a couple of posts up on LinkedIn on this on the subject of kind of managing people and remote working, and a couple of people kind of piling in, going, "Oh, this tool's really great and this tool's really great." Yeah, that's fine, but if you haven't got the things that I've already spoken about in place already, if you're not organised, if you haven't recognised those behaviours and how people are, and you're not managing by outcomes, technology is not going to help with any of that, trust me. So we need to get these points right before we go to the tech, but clearly tech is very helpful, and once you've got the good processes and communication in place, then tech can definitely enable that, make you more efficient, make you more productive. So file sharing apps or file sharing tools, things like Dropbox for sure. In terms of communication, there's obviously Zoom or Skype, and as I mentioned, my top tip, turn your video on, turn it on. Much deeper rapport, much better communication, much more productive and connected conversation when you've got video on. Slack is a really great tool to communicate with the people that you're working with. It's a free tool. In fact, all of these have got free options that I'm mentioning today. And then Trello is what I like to organise myself, but there are many other tools to organise yourself. So I think they are kind of the minimum tools you want to be thinking about in terms of remote working and making all of that collaboration and co-working much more productive and efficient. And talking about collaboration, that brings me on to the last of my five steps. They're not really steps because you want to think about all of these, but the fifth kind of thing that I want to talk to you about, and that obviously starts with E, and that is exchange. And by that I mean you really do want to be encouraging the exchange of ideas and effort. You really do want to be encouraging that collaboration amongst the people that you're working with. It absolutely reduces loneliness. It reduces that feeling of being left out that I was talking about earlier on. It makes people feel connected, and that is so important. At the moment, what is happening is people are feeling increasingly isolated and disconnected. So encouraging as much collaboration and communication as possible is something that you can do for your team, and a really positive thing that you can do for your team. So by empowering people who maybe don't normally work together to work together is a really great thing that, as I say, that you can do, and it will do a lot for your team in terms of them feeling more connected, feeling more engaged, and also just enjoying working with each other and that collaboration that comes from working together. So they are my thoughts on remote working. So firstly, recognize yourself and others and how you're dealing with it. My E is for expectations. So set the expectations both with the people that you live with and the people that you work with. Manage by outcomes for sure. Be more organised than maybe you are used to being for sure. And if you want some help with that or any of this, but particularly with the organised piece, you know where I am. Tools, definitely use tech to enable processes and communication that you've already set up, but don't use them as a substitute for good communication. Right. And exchange, which is my last one, exchange, encourage collaboration, encourage the exchange of ideas and effort to reduce loneliness and increase connectedness in your team. So these are my thoughts and my experience on remote working and managing distributed teams. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and your experience. How are you finding working remotely if you are? How are you finding this kind of new world? How are you finding connecting with customers, with partners, with team members in this slightly different setting than we find ourselves? How are you finding that? And if you're working from home, how is that working for you? Do let me know. And what I would say is listen to yourself, Listen to yourself and ask yourself what you need so that you can spend more of your time in flow. And ask your people what they need so that you can help them spend more of their time in flow, because that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day. So I'm going to close up today's live with 2 quotes about discipline and working together, if you like. So the first is from the 16th US President, Abraham Lincoln. And what he has to say is discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, particularly if we're procrastinating or we're kind of putting off things and we're choosing to do certain things. Like, what do you want now versus what do you want the most? Because sometimes, often, we actually have to not do those things now that maybe we want to, and instead do those things that are actually going to get us what we really want. So what is it that you really want? Because I bet that's, if you can get in touch with that, that's actually stronger than maybe what you want right now. Let's have a think about that one. I quite like that one. And the second quote is from Henry Ford, who is the founder of the Ford Motor Company, or who was the founder of the Ford Motor Company. And what he has to say on this subject is coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. All about collaboration and putting your people in flow. So do let me know your thoughts and questions on this or any other topic relating to how to build a business that really works for you. What area of business would you like me to talk about next? What would be most helpful for you as you grow and scale your business? If you haven't already got a free copy of my book, The Real Entrepreneur, How to Simplify, Grow and Enjoy Your Business, then do go to therealeNtrepreneur.book.com. If you prefer an Audible version or a Kindle version, they are both available on Amazon in the usual way. I do hope that you have a really lovely weekend. Whatever you're doing and whoever you're doing it with, I do wish you a really happy and peaceful time. And as always, if you want to talk, you know where I am. Please remember to be where you are in the journey. You don't need to know it all, and you certainly don't have to do it all. So please take care, stay safe, and do keep in touch. Bye for now. Have a great weekend.